In this short video, I want to continue the discussion about why I assigned the assignment, when was he born, in which I had you search online for 4 sources that you can find that would give you information about Chaucer's birthday. Okay, so one of the reasons I like to use this assignment is that really no one knows for sure when Chaucer was born. All right, now Chaucer was an English poet, early modern, and we don't study a lot of literature in this class, but it's certainly a good topic for this assignment because no one knows when he was born, but we do know within five years or 6 years if you want to kind of stretch things a little bit. It was between 1340 and 1345. Okay, that's your safest range. And when I looked at your work, I think a lot of you picked up on that, and you started using the language of suggestion. Now, you can overdo this to be sure, but if you don't know exactly when he was born, it's no use pretending that you do know when he was born, and you need to say something like, it's assumed that he was born on, 1343 seems to be a popular guesstimate, or, but no one really knows for sure. It's a safer bet to go 1340 to 1345. That's what I mean by language of suggestion. Sort of just admitting right up front, professionally, but admitting, well, no one really knows, but we have some pretty good guesses, and here's why we have some pretty good guesses, and it's within this range, and we still might be wrong, but, we're not going to pinpoint it any, more specific. So, see, the thing is, I know that there are some sources out there that will tell you that he was born in October 25, 1343. How do they know? And in fact, they don't know. So why are they saying that? Because they themselves are doing very shoddy scholarship, and they're going at another source that's older and was saying 1343. And how does that other source know? Well, they're doing the same thing, and they're taking someone else's word for it. And, in today's age of being able to get this information from various outlets, you should have recognized very quickly that you've got 3, or let's say you had 3 saying 1343, 1340, 1341 to 1344, 1340 to 1345, and you had only 1, because I asked you to find 4, saying 1343 was his. Which ones should you go with? Right here, it's a little more credible. Now, what if you found 2 that said 1343 and you had 2 that said 1340 to 1345? More general, and since no one really knows, more professionally sensitive to the data. But it's 2 and 2. What would you have done? You should have found a 5th source, or even a 6th one, to try to settle the tie. Okay. And as a whole, there are more sources out there that tend to be more rigorous with the data in the sense of handling it properly and saying we just don't know. It's a time range rather than a time date, or like a birthday. It's like a birth range or whatever. There are more sources out there that are going to do that correctly so. But you probably ran across 1 or 2 that try to be very overly specific. So I wanted to see if you were able to start becoming sensitive to some conflicting data out there that you might find, and what to do with it, how to settle that sort of thing, and how to back away and take the safer route. The safer route would be to go with the hedging your bets thing, and to go with the range, 1340 to 1345, as opposed to 1343. All right. So that's one of the other things I wanted to happen. I mean, I know I wanted you to really investigate this in terms of common knowledge, but I also wanted to see if you could become sensitive to the fact of there's some people that are willing to deal with the data more confidently than they should. And so they begin to universalize, they begin to overgeneralize, they begin to overemphasize its accuracy, when in fact they need to step back a little bit and articulate it in broader, less certain terms because the data itself isn't certain. Okay, so I was pleased to see that some of you started using the language of possibility for that. Now, there's something else I wanted to watch. Now here's where I need to point it out for you, because if you ran into this trap, it obviously wasn't obvious to you, or you would have backed out, as you would have with, saying he was born in 1343. So the first part of this video, I want to make you aware of the fact that you do need to become sensitive to using the language of probability, the language of suggestion, the language of might have been, probably was, not sure, but here's a good guess, as opposed to he was born on 1343. So there's a lesson learned for those of you that didn't see that and tried to be more specific than was allowed, sort of. You were making an illicit move with the data, going beyond its limits. But then here's another problem, that if you did it, you didn't see it happening because you obviously did it. Had you seen it, you would have backed off. And it's this. It's very easy when you're given a task that turns out to be harder than it looks like at first, to start substituting an easier task for it. So you end up, what I see happening is I see students end up writing about Chaucer's life. And so you have a couple lines saying, well, he was probably born in 1340 to 1345, and then you say, well, now what am I supposed to do? I've got to write a paragraph, and what do I do? Well, see, I wanted you to write about how you knew that, and so you went to the website, but how did the websites know that? Did they talk to you about how they knew in terms of how they established that date? That's what I wanted to see you expand in the paragraph. But it became a temptation, and it was truly an easier task, wasn't it, to just start imitating the stuff you saw online, which almost always is going to give you a recap of his life. So you went online to find these sources. You went to find out when he was born. See, the question I asked you in the assignment is, when was he born, and how do you know it? But because when you went to those sites, you saw that they started off with that information, but then they quickly ran into and expanded on his life in general. You imitated that, and I got little biographies. He was born here, he went here, he was captured in France, he wrote this, he wrote the Pilgrim's, the Canterbury Tales, he wrote that, and he died in 1400. Well, you gave me a nice summary of his life, but that wasn't what the question was asking, right, for the assignment. So one very important thing with this sort of work, and college professors are just notorious for this. We don't necessarily do this on purpose, but if we design it into an assignment, we do want you to start learning how to think along these lines, and that is look very carefully at exactly what the assignment is asking you to do, and stay within those boundaries, because there is a perennial problem with student work. And by perennial, I mean it shows up a lot, and it could be in all sorts of classes: history, philosophy, economics, English, whatnot. The perennial problem we see amateur students do, as if there's a professional student, but what I mean is students that aren't thinking too carefully about this, is that they begin to substitute for whatever task it was. They begin on track, but they quickly start substituting an easier task for the real task. Now, we carefully designed the real thing because we know there are skills we want you to start battling with and starting to develop if you stay on track with the real thing. But when you start developing a skill you don't have, it hurts. It stretches you. It makes you think. It confuses you. It's frustrating. It's just like lifting weights. It hurts for the first time and the second time. But that's exactly the cognitive exercise that allows you at the end to develop that skill. So when you start feeling the pain of the assignment, you might face the temptation of just quietly doing something else and getting the word count in there, and it ends up being easier to write because you're actually doing something different. So if you got to be on your assignment, and you're like, my paragraph was well written, it flowed well, I used transitions well, I didn't have too many grammar mistakes, if any, or typos, but I got a B or a C. Well, go back and look. Did you actually stick with the question it was asking you to answer? See, that's the issue. And I'll be happy to accept resubmissions of this if you wish, but make sure that first of all, you weren't overly confident with the data, so you weren't trying to tell me you knew exactly when he was born. So use the language of suggestion and then stay on track with the assignment. The assignment is asking you to focus on when was he born and how do you know and how do they know the source that you used.